guys, and welcome back to Fortune Theory. Here we are again for our bonus round for this week, episode 2 of Loki, which has just dropped on Disney Plus. So I'll jump straight to Patrick.
Yeah.
So your thoughts?
So, right, straight off the bat, we went straight into the 80s straight away. So my only criticism of the entire episode is a bit like we're going to talk about this in Friday's episode. We have Carl joining us again on Friday, and we spoke briefly about, like, why the 80s for no reason, just to have 80s. Typically at the moment, it's just a way to have 80s music in your story in some way.
Was that because 80s music is so great?
It's just so good. So
why would you not want it? People just add it for
So yeah, they
the thing is they do kind of have an excuse because Marvel know what they're doing with anything they do. Like they haven't cocked up on anything yet. Maybe a few things like Thor: The Dark World.
We'll see.
Yeah, usually they get stuff right. So I think my only critique, if you like, for this episode, was the opening before the credits because they had, can't remember who sung it now. I Need a Hero. Yeah, that's that really like cult classic song.
Well, the 80s,
which was a great addition, but yeah, it overcrowded the audio, and it reminded me of some like shit films that we used to do, without going into too much detail, where the music would just overcrowd the audio, and there was no balance at all between it. And I just thought, please don't let this be for the whole episode. And thankfully, it wasn't. So, but that was my only.
That was just my issue.
Pet peeve about it.
Yeah, they decided to just randomly go to 1985. I think it was the year, just for like some Renaissance fair, and just use that song. They could have used that song anyway. It didn't you don't have to have that moment set in the 80s.
I don't feel like it worked very brilliantly for the scene, but
felt a bit just. It just felt a bit forced.
You got the money, break all the eggs you like, right?
Yeah. But other than that, it was we got to finally sort of meet the new variant of Loki that they're trying to hunt down. The Loki that we're now who we now follow at the TVA is like trying to crack him, and I guessed basically as about 5 to 10 minutes into the episode about trying to sort of decipher how much like the Loki we're following at the TVA is against the TVA and is trying to just basically get out, because Loki, like the God of Mischief, is actually just trying to get out of the TVA the entire time. So every sort of scene he's trying to break down whether or not how much he's genuinely trying to help them versus how much he's just trying to find his way out, because that's just who Loki is as a character, God of Mischief, all that good stuff. So he's going to just try and, be mischievous and find his way out. And then, like, as you see towards the second half of it, with the variant of Loki in Alabama, like this massive supermarket, like superstore, the Walmart of 2050. Is there just
is it Roxcart or Roxmart? Which is it's meant to be a reference to Roxxon, the Roxxon organization, which is brought up a lot in Marvel, like just Marvel in general. If people count the Netflix shows as MCU, it's brought up a lot in those, like specifically in like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage. So yeah, go watch those. They're on Netflix. I consider them MCU canon. Completely up to you. The original versions and styles of TV shows with a much darker context before we got what we get now.
Yeah.
With the more PG-13, like film basis versions of them. Which are pretty good. Yeah, this was a good episode. I feel like once again, it's like with the last episode was very much like they showed us a lot of what we'd seen in the trailers and they'd made it into an episode. And then you feel like that means they're leaving so much out for surprise. And I'm like, I can't wait to find out what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But once again, with this one, obviously a lot more of stuff we've already kind of seen, and a lot of stuff that obviously we haven't seen. Obviously, you're going to be like, well, yeah, but that's how they do it. But I feel like they're doing it in a certain way with this one, which means that they've got a lot left over that we haven't even like scratched the surface with yet, because they've ended this episode introducing us to the Lady Loki variant character, who I thought we probably weren't going to see until closer to the end of the series. So I feel like is there another big bad at play, another variant of Loki who's the real, like, trickster, God of Mischief, like, behind all of this stuff? Or is it literally just going to be her? And, like, I feel like that shot, which everyone thought was him talking to Black Widow on Vormir, I feel like that's going to happen in episode 3. I feel like that's, that whole him traveling between all the different times to see all the apocalypses and stuff like that we saw in the trailer. That'll be what comes next with episode 3, because he's trying to track down his variant self and be like, why is she what if she's Loki, why is she female? Like like it'll all be that sort of stuff that comes next. And I've heard that I can't remember his name, but there's a really famous actor who's going to be playing like a version of classic Loki, like the ones that we'd expect from the comics. He's going to be in like the next few episodes, so I'm really looking forward to that as well. That's going to be good.
But there was a sneaky bit of exposition that was when they're actually the second time they went to the Renaissance with like the Loki we've been following. Is if the exposition was any different, it would have been bad. But it was only because it helped someone like me. I obviously had my assumptions anyway, but basically on when they finally basically revealed, well, it wasn't a final reveal, it was just explaining. Loki asks how, why can't you just go to the beginning of an event? And my original criticism of, if you know everything that's going to happen in every single timeline, you're trying to stop the branches off, surely you can just go from the beginning. But that question was answered in this episode because, well, at least for different events, you have to follow. They're basically playing time from the beginning, as far as I can tell. And so each branch starts, at different stages along the way. So you can't just. They might be able to see time and go back to different points, but they have to go through real-time playback. It's a bit like having a tape, basically, which actually is literally their theme. They are very 80s, 90s themed in the TVA, because literally, I was thinking that
they've got loads of they've mixed retro. I think someone said this before. They've mixed retro kind of 80s technology.
Well, they've got tape decks and the way Loki
pre and post that.
Loki's
and they've also mixed it with very futuristic stuff.
Yeah, they're able to. They mixed it really well. I mean, to be honest, I get that. Obviously, that's sort of retro, but new is a very even just in life at the moment, it's a very sort of trendy theme is to be new 80s almost, new retro, and they've basically put that into the TVA because they've literally Loki's entire life was on a film reel, and you see the bit of tape at the end of episode 1, his film, the end of his tape, Loki's life done. He watches his own death, but
I've had nightmares in the past where I die, and then literally it just shows the credits of everybody who's been in the making of my life. The directors are my parents, and then the writers, directors are the parents, God, and all the people that have molded me into if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't have gone to do this. So that would have been part of my journey. So that's jobs, managers, supervisors, teachers, friends, girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, all that sort of stuff. Everybody's had a part to play, and it's that's all the credits. And then at the end of it, it's just end of file.
Yeah.
And it's the moment my neck snaps or whatever happens that kills me is I get eaten by a shark or something. That's the, that's that last crunch or snap or gunshot. That last second is what kills me, and it's that's that fire. And when I watched that first episode and they showed that, I was that's literally a living moment of my nightmare. Seeing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd laughed maniacally the same after I saw that, to be honest.
Well, he was horrified when he saw
Glorious
his death because he obviously didn't know.
Yeah, this is episode 2, not 1. So yeah, just a little added on. But...
To be honest, if I was the designer of TVA, out of any, if you obviously didn't know of any future time to come, and I presume that there's no other good time in their timeline where trends and design for products were at a better stage because of the tape decks, you would choose to have vinyls and tape decks because they're just sick. The massive tape deck in who's the other just got mind blank on character names. Owen Wilson plays
Owen Wilson's character?
Yeah.
Mobius.
Because when Mobius,
not to be confused with Morbius, who's a Spider-Man villain who's getting his own movie, which has just been confirmed to be part of the MCU as well, which we kind of knew anyway. So we're looking forward to that. And yeah, so no, use your brain. There's no R in his name. Agent Mobius, played by Owen Wilson. I love their dynamic together between the two characters. Obviously, it all sparked off in the first episode, but in this episode, I felt like we got to see them a lot more together and in unison, and like they're really working together as like businessmen. They kind of almost their dynamic of like they kind of remind me of me and you, Pat, like and how we work. So like you're Owen Wilson who does all the research, and I'm Loki who just comes chasing you, like filling you with like theories and philosophies and whatnot. And you're like, holy shit, you're right or you're wrong, or we'll test that theory. And then I do stuff that pisses you off, and like we go, that's how things go round and round. Like Loki's got this theory about the whole fact that his variant is hiding in realms where the apocalypses are happening. So therefore there's no branch timeline created from that reality until they jump off and kill more of the Minutemen. But again, I feel like I'm still confused on the logic behind it all, really. Like, why they do that, why they don't just go around and break reality a little bit more, but how they survive to not be tracked down, I guess, by the Minutemen.
Well, yeah, you just made me think of something
for context, again, the Minutemen are basically those people that go around with the armored suits on, those, like, rainbow evaporating tasers, whatever they're called. Like,
I might be thinking wrong here, but surely, obviously, their main point is they try to stop the branch realities, and they're trying to keep the set. They and especially the timekeepers is their main role is to just keep the consistent main timeline of the universe until the end of the time. So, but if they have the time branch,
but they are the end of time, though, aren't they?
Yeah, they control it, the end of time anyway, to make the time. Technically, almost like a paradox, but correct me if I'm wrong. Anyone, comment below if I'm an idiot, and I'm not thinking straight. Probably, likely. If you have the ability to correct time branches, surely you can just go to any point. I know this sort of contradicts what I was saying earlier about like how they done the exposition to reveal that you can only go. You're playing it back almost, so you can't go to an exact point you want to. But they can go to any event that they know of in any branch, fix it whenever they need to, whenever it starts playing, whenever they get to that point. And if it doesn't work, they can then just go back to that point, almost like hitting rewind, surely, and fix any issues they had in the first initial fix they tried to... Have I lost you? Basically, no. If you go to... You try to fix the first branch... And because your purpose at the TVA is to fix the branch realities, if you mess up in trying to fix it the first time, you can then just go back again, surely. Because if your whole purpose is to fix the branch, if you fixed it but not properly, then there's still a bit of a branch reality. Or then, by fixing it, you created a slightly different branch. So then you can then just go back. Because at the end of the day, they control the timeline, trying to keep the one consistent main timeline of the universe.
I can't explain time travel. I think, to be honest, I don't really feel like they can either. I don't really feel like anyone can.
Well, they are creating a very...
The way they're doing it is they're really bringing their own logic to it, and they're just kind of going with the flow with it. But in a weird way, because Marvel's really smart with just anything film and TV compared to a lot of studios. That's my opinion, by the way.
Opinions. You're allowed an opinion.
I'm allowed my... They make it work, and we love it just because we're the endorphed nerds of Marvel. So, or just anything comic booky. So,
to be fair, they are allowed to just... Regardless of how physics and time and relativity and all that crap around science works, they can just... And what it sounds like has happened in this series is they basically just... The TVA can... They are constrained by whatever they're constrained by, and however much, like, my original critiques on them being like TVA and being able to see all of time, why can't they just go back to the beginning if they know what's going to happen and fix it before it ever happened? Basically a paradox, because it would have never happened in the first place, but if you got branch reality...
Because I feel like there's always that chance that it wouldn't happen, and it would happen the way it's meant to happen, but they don't know it's going to be an issue until it happens. That's why, obviously, they didn't arrest Loki until after he took the Tesseract because that's when they noticed it happened wrong.
But then again,
but other than that, they're not allowed to interfere themselves because I think when they went to Pompeii, Mobius basically said that obviously it doesn't matter with them because like now that they're back in that reality, they can't change anything. But obviously, until once the place had been destroyed, it didn't matter anyway because if there was an issue with it from what they'd had changed, they would have just reset the area anyway. But it doesn't need to be reset if it's destroyed because there's nothing that makes a difference from that location. Everything's been destroyed. Everybody's died or left. Yeah. So that scenario is irrelevant anymore. And that's obviously how this Lady Loki is jumping between these realities and, not making any effect because, killing the Minutemen because she can get away with it. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something with that. I haven't really I feel like I need to watch the whole series a couple times before I really understand the context of what that means.
Yeah, yeah.
Or maybe just a few more episodes just to explain it a bit better. They've made this show really for the smart ones, aren't they? This is I noticed that they've done this since WandaVision. Like now all these shows are coming out, they know who the fan base is. They know that they look for Easter eggs and they're smart audiences. They'll look at anything. They'll look at one line of dialogue saying he's the better one or something like that, and you'll be like, "Oh, I wonder if they mean this character or this character or this version of this character, or we'll see this version of this character." That's the way we think now. It's like a cognitive behavioral disorder where we just mix and match everything. There's always an association with everything. Yeah. It's like obsession.
I mean, one of the one of the ways I do understand how the TVA physically, there are people outside of the TVA in the universe, like Thanos, for instance, that have control and the ability, literally explained in Endgame, to, go back and forward in time, because how Thanos literally finds out that, he's going to be losing a battle. So, Endgame happens. So they aren't TVA aren't the only people that can, mess with time and fix it and keep the main timeline. So that is
none of the events of Endgame, they consider Endgame as a meant to happen.
Exactly.
Because
the main
outcome of it, the outcome of it for all characters is paid off anyway, because the nebula that affects time is going to get killed by doing that. Kind of, because she gets killed by her own self, so therefore she doesn't need to be reset. No. Tony Stark, who would have traveled back in time, our main one, also dies. So therefore, if they were to consider him to commit any crimes, he doesn't need to be reset because he's been killed.
No.
Thanos and all the forces that traveled from 2014 branch reality to the main MCU timeline 2023, they all get dusted, and they're not going to get brought back. So technically, there's nothing they can do to affect a timeline anymore.
No.
And obviously, everybody knows about the whole mixed multiverse of timelines now and whatnot. So there's nothing that's really affecting anything. It's the way the reality's been augmented. So that main MCU timeline is fine because that's how things were meant to happen, kind of. It wasn't a travel through like the TVA creating branch realities or whatnot. Plus, they returned all the stones, so, nothing was, fucked up.
But
going back to your comment that you said a minute ago about going back to the beginning of that event before it goes wrong, it reminds me of something I saw on Family Guy. Actually,
of all places.
Weird, of all places, because Stewie creates a time machine, and he and Brian go back because they want to help Chris pass his history exam or something. And they go to him in the middle of the night, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to take you on a trip, in our time machine about history." And they say with no consequences, and then he cuts his hand off. They go back. They go to Chris in the middle of the night. They just say to him, "Right, we're going to help you pass your history exam. We're going to take you on a trip to historical locations. We're in a place with no consequence. You're dreaming," because they don't want Chris to know about the time machine. And then Chris is like, "Yeah, a dream with no consequence." He cuts his arm off, and then they go back 6 minutes ago and try again. And I'm like, so what happens to that version of Chris? Does he die of blood loss? And what happens to the versions of Stewie and Brian who would have told him that and know that, other than the fact that they leave the room, go back in time, and then they tell Chris again from 6 minutes ago? But then what happens to that? Not that version of Stewie and Brian, sorry, just that version of Chris. Does he die? Does he just get reset? Does he not know it's even happened?
It's a good idea to link that and
Where's
Marvel.
Where's the TVA when they're meddling with affairs of time travel?
Because one is that and one is Marvel.
Does that one-armed Chris get arrested by the TVA for making himself exist in a reality that no longer can be worth it because it had to be changed a second time? Or is it that second Chris that would get arrested by the TVA? Or is it even, or because it's not even really their fault? Well, I suppose the TVA is too dumb to see it that way, aren't they? Like, you know, it's not Loki's fault he decides to pick up the fucking Tesseract.
I think that's a question for episode 3.
Yeah, like, you know,
which you may uncover.
They talk to them like, oh, you've committed it. Like, you know, people know when they've committed a crime. Like, oh, you've murdered someone and you know it, you're guilty of it. But like, they treat you like it's the same sort of level of crime. But you are like, but they talk to you as if you should know this. Like, God doesn't plead guilty, especially when we don't even understand why what we've done is a crime. It's just the continuation of the flow of life from him.
I think a murder's a terrible example though, because you know if you murdered someone, but
yeah, obviously Loki is a killer, kind of, but not really. Like he says in the first episode, he doesn't enjoy hurting people.
Or does he?
Or does he? But he took the Tesseract willingly, but. And obviously that would have been a bad thing with bad consequences anyway, because if he'd taken it, he'd obviously wanted to deliver it to Thanos, unless he was planning on betraying Thanos, and therefore he probably would have died during doing that if he'd won anyway. But no, just we'll postpone it, and then he'll live for another 6 years, and then he'll die. But yeah, glorious purpose. Yeah, it's really baffling me at the moment. I hope like the whole thing with the whole multiversal war, if it's left unchecked. Like the fact that all those branch realities have like just opened up from across away from the sacred timeline, and they're trying to like all these Minutemen are going through those like weird like, you know, Rubik's Cube portal block things, and they're all just like panicking because like all these have opened up. But like I hope we get to see like what a multiversal war would look like. Maybe that lingers on into like, you know, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Maybe.
Who knows?
Because I knew that obviously all these split timelines were just branch realities, and then obviously all of them merging would be like that's the multiverse, basically. And obviously that was set up in Endgame, and that's like kind of semi cliffhangering what's happening with this universe, I suppose now.
And we were left on a cliffhanger now, so you know, with
like the MCM, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, like, you know, instead of the MCU, like. That's the MCU. This is the sequel to the MCU. These next like 4 phases, that next like 3 to 4 phases from 4 to 6, and it's like the MCM, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, and like we're bringing in like the X-Men characters from Fox, which now Marvel own. We're bringing in like Spider-Man from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's like range. Speaking of which, there's loads of hints of that. About a new trailer coming out for that. So once that drops, if it does anytime soon, we might do another bonus video on that too. We're just cracking up with content now. This is great. What else?
And if you have any ideas for content,
the Morbius
please comment.
Stuff that they've just
if you want us to react to anything, if you want us to react to anything, if you have a film or TV show that you would like us to watch and or react to and talk about, please comment, like message us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, comments below. Anywhere, we're literally everywhere now, other than our own personal Snapchats. That's basically we're literally everywhere. Tweet us, anything. All links below.
Please don't message our personal Snapchats.
We don't have them, so we're good. But yeah, if you want us to do any like reactions or talk about anything, let us know. But that's been Loki episode 2. We'll see you on Friday for the main episode.
If anything you want us to add to, we'll add to it in our episode 3 video or in any of our other bulk podcasts. If we remember it during the production of that, of course. As for now, I feel like I keep forgetting to say this over the last few videos. I'm Oliver and this is Patrick. If you're new here, feel free to like, subscribe, follow, share about with your friends. Completely up to you. You don't have to. It's just something we like to do. But yeah, until next time. Next week for episode 3 for Loki, so that'll be next Wednesday, and this Friday, obviously when you get this, and this Friday, our next episode, which will be
Cruella and Joker.
Cruella and Joker. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys.